Hey guys, wait till you see these rose-shaped dumplings. These are so delicious. I think you're going to enjoy them. So coming up next, we're going to take a look at a national dish of Afghanistan called Mantu. Mantu are by far some of the best dumplings I've ever had. And coming from Afghanistan, they're made of a thin dough, usually mixed with beef or lamb or a combination, and they're steamed and often served with a variety of garnishes, sauces, or herbs. And this is a dish so popular in Afghanistan that it's served as the main dish or as a side dish. And it's for special occasions and large gatherings that you would see Mantu. Even the markets and street vendors are going to have this for purchase. There's typically a fragrant tomato sauce, a yogurt sauce, and even cooked lentils and cilantro on top. And there is just a huge list of different types of dumplings with different identities, and of course not limited. And the spelling is also different as well from what I've taken a look at. But here is just a small list of different countries with their versions of dumplings. It's really good research. There's so much to look up. It's just amazing. And one of the things you can certainly do, like I always do, if you're into research, go ahead and take a look at these links. Eileen Guo has a wonderful article, and we certainly have a few websites here that you could reference as well. And ultimately, this allows you some freedom, so you have decision making that you can take control of. We've got 3 separate recipes. So we have the dumpling recipe, a tomato sauce recipe, and an herb vinaigrette recipe. Now you are going to want to pause the video. Here is the mixture. I chose to do lamb in my video, and this is going to require some pretty intensive labor. You may want to get your older kids involved if you're confident that they can handle the knife, or mom and dad take over the knife duties. Let the kids have fun pulling some of the leaves from the herbs. Now the tomato sauce base is extremely easy. Oh my God, and it's so fragrant. I think you're going to love this. It's not your typical tomato sauce base, but you could certainly have fun with these flavors here. You're better off going to a Middle Eastern shop that has some of these spices, or you could check them out online. For like ras el hanout, if you can't find it, you can use turmeric. Now, herb vinaigrette, very easy to make. The herbs are used in just about everything here, including your plating. And everything is easy to find. So if we take a look at the next step here, you have to have real good mise-en-place skills. Again, it's labor intensive, so just be prepared ahead of time. Make sure the knives are sharpened and that cutting board's ready, because it's time to prep quite a bit of food. Now, I don't want you to be intimidated by this. It's actually very medicinal. Everything that goes into this is so fresh. The spices and the herbs are very fragrant. And as we take a look at the vegetables here, you're going to do a brunoise. So you're basically doing a julienne, and then you're taking that and you're doing a very small dice. And the key element here is some of this is going to go into the dumpling mixture. So I've got some rainbow carrots, I've got the celery. I'm going to play with a few other items that'll go into that mixture. And notice I'm taking my time with this. Please take your time. No losing fingers today, folks. So just be mindful, pull your fingers back, and you can achieve a brunoise. I know you can do it. This is definitely one of my favorite dishes that's on rotation. We take a look at what we can use locally as much as possible. And in this case, with 1, sometimes 2 bunches, it depends. I'm going to split the scallions in half. Some of them are going to be chopped, and the other is going to be halved and chopped. The halved and chopped are going to be going into the dumpling mixture itself for the Mantu. And as you can see here, we're still taking our time. I purposely slowed down my cutting so you could see exactly how I'm taking this. Small bite size. for the mixture, as small as you can get it. Just do the best that you can. And if you have a lot of little containers, that might help you out, or grab yourself one big bowl, whatever works for you. Now, when it comes to the shallots and the garlic, you definitely want to consider what's easiest for you. If a garlic press makes your life easier, go for it. Otherwise, use your trusty knife. Just be careful with the fingers. You can see with those shallots, we're just taking our time. We're doing strips. Ultimately, those strips are going to go in for the tomato base, because we do need to make a couple of sauces for this. And again, use some small containers just to keep everything clean and neat and all in an orderly fashion. This is going to start coming together when you start seeing everything mixed up in the bowl. There will be some more work involved. So take the entire batch of the vegetables, mix about half the amount of garlic into this. You definitely want to add as much fresh thyme as you want. You don't have to have fresh thyme. If you've got dried, go ahead and use it. But ultimately, we want to mix this all around. And I get in there. I'm just tossing my hand in there and going at it. So I want to make sure there's no clumps of garlic in there. And this is looking pretty good. Now I want to split this eventually, but I'm going to be putting in some fresh thyme leaves. I tend to I look at it and I say, okay, enough looks enough, maybe a little bit more. It's something that you just have to get used to. Now from the fresh herbs, take about a quarter from each bundle. We just happen to get some pretty good sized bundles of herbs. So divide the prep vegetables in half after you take care of your herbs. As you can see here, we want to finely chop them as best as possible. This is probably one of the fastest ways you can chop this up. And it comes together beautifully, and it smells amazing. Oh my God. Talk about therapy right here. Now, we're doing the mint, we're doing the cilantro, and we're doing dill. For those of you that don't like cilantro, omit it, but don't look for an equal. There's no such thing as an equal for cilantro. But you can certainly experiment with a little bit more mint if you want. You could get fresh parsley if you wanted to. I personally wouldn't, but it'll still work. I'm just not a fan of parsley in this dish. Now, as you can see, we're working that bowl of veg. I'm going to take half of this and set it aside in its own separate bowl, because ultimately I'm going to get those fresh herbs on top of that. And there's a reason for this as well. We're going to use this for the mixture when we go to do the filling for the mantu. And then the vegetables that are remaining, we're going to saute those up in a pan. And that's actually going to be either a side dish or an easy garnish, to be very truthful with you. At the end of this, you'll see what it looks like all plated up. It's just drop dead gorgeous. Now we're going to put those chopped herbs directly on top. And now we're going to take a look at getting this tomato sauce prepped. So get the oven on, 400 degrees or 205 Celsius. The easiest sauce you can make, folks, is right here. Put some cumin seeds in a pan that has some olive oil. We're going to put some fennel seeds in as well. I'm telling you, this is so fast and easy to make. Let the oven do the work for you, because you're going to be doing filling of the mantu. So if you're looking at pricing concerns about herbs, yeah, some of them can be freaking expensive. Spices just as much. There are some places where you can actually get only the amount that you need. You can also take a look at your local dollar stores, by the way. Some of them for $1.25, you can get a small container, and it's easier on the budget. Now I've got about a pound of these cherry tomatoes, a little bit of salt going in, and I'm adding a little bit of pepper here. And remember those shallots we did up? We're going to toss those in here as well. Definitely adds a beautiful garlicky flavor when this all cooks up in the oven. It's actually quite a nice aroma. Do you have to have it? No, you could easily use onions. Now, ras el hanout is not a requirement, but if you can find it at a local Middle Eastern shop, take some home. It's mind-blowing. There's so much flavor you can get from this powder. If you don't have the ability to find it or order online, just toss in a little bit of turmeric if you have access to that. That's another, you can get it at the dollar store. And here we go, we got those shallots. The key element here is it's going to go into the oven, and then you're going to want it to cool, because ultimately we're going to blitz it. We're going to blitz it till it's smooth, and it will be thick. So grab a bowl and mix this base with some chicken stock. Don't put the whole chicken stock in, just start with a half cup and go from there. We want to gently thin it out because it's going to be one of the base sauces on the plate. Now, go and get those ingredients for the herb vinaigrette recipe from earlier. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to grab some herbs, and we're going to take a little bit of the tomato sauce and a few other ingredients in that recipe, and we're going to blitz that. It'll still maintain a beautiful green color. Having two different sauces actually works out great because you have something rich, you have something decadent. We're playing with the salt, savory, sweet, tangy, even bitter, because sometimes the herbs might have a little bitter to it. But I always believe in having a vinaigrette type of sauce as a way to offer the acid needed to clean the palate, and you get a little balance out of this dish. So we are on to making the mixture. So in your reserved vegetable herb bowl, you want to add that to your ground lamb, or if you're using beef, add it to your ground beef. And you're going to want to add your spices to this bowl at this point. It is up to you how far you want to take it, of course. We're working with some that are not necessarily familiar in most domestic households. Sumac, za'atar are beautiful flavors. Personally, I don't measure out. I don't think I've ever measured out any spices before. But I did give you a good start to try. And ultimately, with any mixture, you always want to do a tester patty. That way you can taste it ahead of time and say, might need a little bit of salt, might need more za'atar, might need more sumac. You just don't know. So this is just me eyeballing this, but I do give you some areas that you can start with. Now get in there, don't be afraid. Mash and mix this until it's completely cohesive. Now, typically this should only take 3 to 5 minutes or so, but it's a slightly different mixture than what you might be used to for other dumplings or, say, meatloaf making or meatball making. We've got a lot of herbs in here. We've got a lot of heavy flavored spices, so you definitely want to make sure this is mixed really, really good. And here I'm just going to town on it. I am just not paying attention to time. I'm looking at everything as I go. And this will be perfect. I look at this as it's a good mixture with the right ratios. Now the beautiful part about all that work you did to the vegetables, cutting them brunoise means they're going to cook in the dumplings when it comes time to brown the bottoms and steam them off. So that's ultimately why it's important to take your time if you've never done a fine dice cut like a brunoise. And here we're just folding in the mixture onto itself. And eventually I'm going to toss in some kosher salt and some black pepper here. Sumac, for those that can't have added salt, sumac provides a citrusy salt element. So you could certainly add that to this a little bit more if you didn't want to use kosher salt. It's a beautiful flavor, and I find sumac to be very easy to find. Now, on top of the kosher salt and black pepper, I'm actually putting in a little bit of olive oil. This needs to be as smooth as possible because ultimately we're working with stuffing some dumpling wrappers. You can also use old school flour and water if you want. I just happen to like supporting local as much as I can. I think it's important. And the cost of what it makes for, if you do it homemade for wrappers, it's the same price at the local Asian market. So it's a win-win situation. Now, automatically, I'm looking at this as everything is mixed in. I've added the kosher salt, a little bit of olive oil to this mixture, and black pepper. And I am going to do a tester patty on this. In fact, I found that I added more za'atar, and it's only because that's what we like. So you're in control. That's the beauty of what I'm putting forth for folks. I think it's important that you have some say in what you're doing, because not everyone is into the kind of spices we are. Let's just face it. But diversity is the spice of life, no pun intended. And you can see here, this has dramatically changed. And now it's time to make the Mantu dumplings. So we're making a rose, and as you can see here, it's tightly woven. And we need 3 wrappers in order to make this rose shape happen. And believe it or not, it's the easiest flippin' thing you could make. Like ridiculously easy. So pull out 3 wrappers, get a little shot glass of water or a little bowl, doesn't matter, use what works for you. Now as you can see, we are putting a little water around the edges and on the sides of those dumpling wrappers, and I have them set up in a domino effect. And we're taking the mixture and we're putting this just below the middle section of the dumpling, and I want it to be in a straight line as much as possible. This is definitely a little bit more filling than you would use for Chinese dumplings. And we want to make sure that we have the sides empty all around this filling. So now I'm re-wetting those sides because we need this to be glued together when we fold this upward onto itself. So here we are, we're taking the bottom and I'm going to fold it upward to the top. You do the best you can to get the tops to match up. Sometimes you'll have a wrapper that might have been pulled and it's a little outstretched. That's okay. And just take your fingers and press hard as much as you can, because we ultimately want to treat this just like dumplings and wrappers for like when you're doing ravioli. So you want to seal it and get out as much air as you can. Now you should have achieved this, and honest to God, once you get the hang of this, it is so fast and easy to make this. So all along this upper side, we're wetting it with water again, and we're going to take one side and we're going to start rolling it up. Kind of like if you were going to do cinnamon rolls when you roll up the dough, and we're just turning it onto itself, and that water is also acting like glue, so this will stay in place. Now you may have to re-water it again. Just be careful on how much water you're using because you don't want it to get all mushy. But I'm finding that this is sticking beautifully, and now I can gently press that edge into the side and I have a Mantu rose. This rose is like the epitome of everything Afghanistan has for the dish. Very elegant looking. There's actually a restaurant in Virginia that makes these. I was very much inspired by the chef that did it. And again, don't use too much filling because we do have to seal this shut, and we don't want to have too much air in this. In fact, if you can get all the air out, you'll be better off. So we're just going to repeat the process again, but we're going to show you another way. If you don't want to use 3 wrappers at once, just use 1 and treat it just like a Chinese dumpling. Except this time, when you go to hold it like a taco, pinch the top, and then you're going to take the sides and fold it into that pinched section that you put in. And you're going to do that so you've got 4 sides. It does take a little bit of practice, but you can get this to seal. And they're perfect 1 bites. Let me tell you something. I had so many of these when I made this. Oh God, it's when leftovers are so awesome. Head over to the stove now. Once you've got everything filled, you're going to need a container of water, saute pan with lid, spatula, olive oil, optional kosher salt, and you need a platter to put all the cooked mantu on. So we're going to get that set up for you over a medium-high pan. We definitely want to stay put. So just like the Chinese dumpling video, don't walk away. Keep the kids out of the kitchen because you're dealing with hot oil splatter and eventually steam. Medium-high heat is going to put a better bum on this, if you will. You'll get a nice brown bottom with olive oil, a little kosher salt, and you want to make sure they all have room in the pan. Now, if you find through cooking one area of the pan is hotter than the other, move the mantu around. This shouldn't be to the point where it's burning the bottom. You want to get them as brown as possible. To achieve that, cooking time is going to vary. So that's why you got to stay put. Don't walk away. So take a look at these after a couple of minutes and certainly switch them around. If you find you've got one area that cooks it extremely well and another part of the pan, not so much, switch it up. Because ultimately, the same goal with Chinese dumplings, or pot stickers as some folks would call them, you want the same thing here with the mantu. Now these suckers are huge, so they're going to need room to expand when it comes time to put the water in. And to brown the bottoms, they actually don't take long. I actually found within just a couple of minutes, they started browning beautifully. I think I only had 1 or 2 I had to shift around because I'm stuck working with electric. You may have a better reaction with, your gas stove. Some folks are even using propane up here where I live. So it really just depends on you being very observant. So we're at that point, we're going to start checking the bottoms. And as you can see, I've got a nice browning started here. And not so much on this one. I actually took a look at the bottom, and I know that needs more time. Doesn't take long after that really, but if you have to, switch it around. And we definitely want to be mindful. Medium-high heat, don't go higher, because you don't want this smoking. Look at that! Oh my God. So I'm going to move one that was too blonde into the middle. Look at that, looking pretty. So we're almost at that point. We're going to get ready. Grab your lid and get a container of water. I started with about a cup and a half of water to get going. This is the part where we're essentially steaming them. And be very careful here. You don't want to get burned. So that's why you want everything at the ready. Mise-en-place is just not all about the food itself. It's also about the equipment. Now, as you can see here, the steam is doing its job. It's cooking the rest of the mantu to the point where this won't take long. I'd say on average 5 to 7 minutes, and these are going to be cooked through, and you can pull them from the pan. So make sure that platter is on the side and at the ready. And as you can see here, these are puffing up beautifully. They look wonderful. And yes, I know my stove, so sometimes I have to shift my pan around. And I'm going to put a little bit more water here just because I could see some of the dough isn't fully cooked. It'll go from white to an off beige color. And that's why it's important you stay put. Now the remaining vegetables, when you're done with your mantu, get them out of the pan. And add more olive oil to the pan. You don't want any water in there. Salt and black pepper. Just saute the vegetables 5-7 minutes or until cooked to your liking. And put them in a separate bowl, because now you can plate up your food. Look at the sauces. So you can put one in the other on opposite sides. We've got some small herbs, and we have those sauteed vegetables. It looks like a garden. It's just absolutely beautiful. And I've dusted this with some sumac as well. It's always a great garnish for sumac, and it just pulls everything else together beautifully. Lots of good color and lots of good flavor. So I hope you'll enjoy this. Thanks so much for joining. And if you're